My mother spent $4,000 of her own money just to make sure I couldn't get married in the body I actually live in. She didn't tell me. She didn't ask me. She simply erased my wedding day the way you'd erase a mistake in pencil, quiet, clean, deniable. But 3 months later, at a family reunion that had run for 24 straight years without a single empty chair going noticed, 40 people stood up in the middle of lunch and walked out. And the woman who caused it had been missing from that family for 17 years. If you've ever been told that love comes with a number attached, a size, a scale, a set of conditions you never agreed to, then pull up a chair, because this story is for you. I'm going to walk you through exactly how one ultimatum unraveled 30 years of silence in my family. Like this video, subscribe if you've ever had to choose between being loved and being yourself, and drop a comment when you get to the part with the photo albums. Trust me, you'll know it when you see it. My name is Elena Marsh. I'm 34, and I run a catering business out of a converted bakery on the edge of a small Ohio town most people have never heard of. I built it from nothing, $3,000, a second-hand delivery van, and enough stubbornness to outlast 4 years of 80-hour weeks. I named it the long table because growing up, I never had one. There were always 2 tables in my parents' house. The real one in the dining room, polished and photographed, and a smaller folding one wedged against the kitchen wall, where I sat starting around age 9, closer to the food, my mother called it, so I could help. My portion got cleared before dessert arrived. My younger sister's plate never did, because she'd learned early to leave things on it, and I never quite managed to. The kitchen was supposed to feel like punishment. Instead, it became the one place I actually belonged. By 17, I could cook circles around every woman in my family, and they all knew it. They just never said it out loud, because admiration wasn't really the currency we traded in. Control was. For 6 years running, I catered every family event for free. Birthdays, funerals, the 4th of July, and the biggest one, the family reunion at Millbrook Lake, every second Saturday of September. 40 relatives, 3 generations of folding chairs, and my food holding the whole afternoon together while my mother collected the compliments like they were rent she was owed. I told myself it was generosity. It wasn't. It was a girl still trying to buy her way from the second table to the first, one chafing dish at a time. And every single year, at the far end of that reunion, there was one folding chair that got set up and never used. Nobody assigned it. Nobody folded it away either. It just stood there, facing the lake, empty. I asked about it once, when I was maybe 19. The table went so quiet you could hear the boat motors on the water, and my aunt got up and started scraping plates that were already clean. I never asked again. I noticed, though, that my grandmother, my own mother's mother, didn't exist in our family. No calls. No visits. Not even a mention at Thanksgiving, and dead relatives at least get mentioned at Thanksgiving. She was something worse than dead. She'd been edited out completely. I was about to find out exactly what it takes to earn that kind of erasure in my family. And it turns out, it isn't cruelty. It's telling the truth at the wrong table. In April, my fiancé Marcus proposed under the apple trees at Kestrel Farm, 20 minutes outside town, right after I'd finished breaking down a wedding I'd catered there myself. He still had his catering gloves on. He held the ring out like he was serving dessert, and I said yes before his knee even touched the grass. For about 6 hours, I floated. I already had the picture in my head, the one every bride carries around like a family recipe. Me and Marcus under those trees, and behind us, all of them. My parents. My sister. Aunts, uncles, cousins, one unbroken row of family, finally proud of me in a photograph. Then we drove to my parents' house to tell them, and I watched my mother's eyes do the thing they'd done my entire life. They went in my waist before they went to the ring. She recovered fast, she always does. Hugged me. Said October was a lovely month for a wedding. But I'd already seen the look. I'd been reading that look since before I could read anything else. The ultimatum came in mid-May, over Sunday dinner, somewhere between the roast and the lemon bars I'd baked that morning. My mother set down her serving spoon, pulled a folded sheet of paper out of her cardigan pocket, and slid it across the tablecloth like she was handing me a bill. It was a diet plan. Printed. Dated. Laminated, actually laminated, with weekly weigh-in targets written out in her tidy church bulletin handwriting, starting that Monday and ending the week of my wedding. 40 pounds, she said. You have 5 months. It's completely doable if you take it seriously. I looked at my father. He was studying his plate like it had scripture written on it. My sister stirred her tea, eyes down, spoons circling without a sound. And if I don't? I asked, and I wanted it on record that my voice didn't shake. My mother folded her hands. Then there's no wedding, sweetheart. Not one we pay for. Not one we stand in. A pause, timed like she'd rehearsed it. You'll embarrass us in the photos. There it was. Not whispered. Not softened. Just set down on the table between the roast and the lemon bars, in front of my father, my sister, and God. She even smiled a little, the same encouraging smile she gave church volunteers when she was assigning them a job nobody wanted. I put my fork down. I told her I was marrying Marcus in October, in the body I was currently occupying, and that she was welcome to be photographed near it. My sister's spoon went still. My mother's smile didn't move an inch. Well, she said, it's a good thing the venue's in my name, isn't it? Here's the part where you're probably asking why my wedding venue was in my mother's name. I asked the same question back in April. The venue, a beautiful old inn on the edge of town, was her gift. That was the exact word she used. Past tense. Done deal. She'd booked it, signed the contract, and put down a $4,000 deposit for the second Saturday in October before I'd even seen the place. I run a business. I know what a signature means. So that same week, I called the events coordinator and asked to be added to the contract. She apologized, house policy, only one signing client per event, no exceptions. The contract holder makes all the changes. Fine. I offered my mother a check for the full deposit so we could rebook it under my name instead. She wouldn't take it. It's my gift, she said, hand flat over her heart like I'd insulted a flag. Don't you dare insult me. And what do you do with that? In April, when everything still smells like cake tastings and everyone's still smiling, you tell yourself your mother booked your wedding because she loves you. You feel the cold little knot in your stomach and you set it aside, because turning it into a fight would somehow make you the problem. I'd already done the math. The answer was simple and I hated it. A gift you're not allowed to refuse isn't a gift. It's a leash with a bow tied on it. Marcus found out about the ultimatum that same night and went very quiet, which, for him, is the same as shouting. I proposed to the woman standing in front of me, he finally said. All of her. I don't remember ordering a smaller version. His family is what I've slowly come to understand normal actually looks like. His mother's only question about the wedding was what we were serving and whether she could bring her lemon cake. That was the entire list of her demands. The contrast made my chest physically hurt. Still, I tried. That Wednesday, I went back alone, sat in my mother's spotless kitchen, and offered her a truce I'd rehearsed the whole drive over. I'd hire a trainer, I said, if it made her feel better, for strength, for the long haul for me. But there would be no scale attached to my marriage. No weigh-ins. No deadline. I thought it was generous. She listened with her head tilted the way she listens to bad news from the pulpit. You think I'm being cruel? She said. I'm the only person in your life honest enough to protect you. The world is vicious to women who let themselves go. A pause. A mother fixes her daughter before strangers get the chance to. She believed that completely. I need you to understand that, because it's the engine behind everything that came after. In her mind, criticism was love, and she considered herself fluent in it. She patted my hand like we'd just agreed on something. The 4th of July, she said. The whole family will be there. You'll give me your answer in front of everyone, one way or another. The 4th of July cookout was at my parents' place. 20-some relatives on the back lawn, and my mother was ready for me. When the food line formed, she appeared at my elbow holding a plate she'd made up special. Steamed vegetables, a dry chicken breast, a scoop of cottage cheese, and announced, at full volume, the bride's plate. We're all supporting Elena's little journey. Heads turned. A couple of uncles chuckled. Someone said, wasn't that thoughtful of her? I'd already told her no in May and no in June. And here she was announcing my surrender to 40 people like a raffle winner. I kept my hands at my sides. I said, clearly enough to carry, that there was no journey, no plan, and that the wedding was happening in October. Then I set the plate down gently on the buffet table, like it was evidence. What happened next is basically a law of physics in my family. Her eyes filled instantly. Her chin did its small, brave tremble. Within 90 seconds, 3 ants had closed around her like gauze around a wound, glaring at me over her shoulder while she whispered that she was only trying to help. I actually found myself halfway into an apology for my tone, for the scene, for the weather on her lawn before I caught myself and stopped. That unfinished apology followed me around for weeks anyway. 2 weeks later, an email landed in my inbox with a subject line I had to read 3 times. So sorry to hear about the postponement. It was from the venue coordinator. Kind. Which somehow made it worse. My mother had canceled the contract in person, calm as a customer returning a sweater, for days after that cookout. She forfeited the entire $4,000 deposit. She knew the policy and canceled anyway. My date, my actual wedding date, had been rebooked that same morning to a couple on the waiting list. She had already made all the calls before I even knew. My aunts knew. My cousins knew. She told everyone it was for health reasons, with a pause that let people fill in the blank with my body themselves. She'd taken my own story out of my hands and told it her way to everyone I know, and she'd done it first, which in a small town is the entire game. Anything I said now would arrive second. And second always sounds like spin. I drove to my parents' house with the email still open on my phone. My mother was in the flower beds, deadheading petunias, and didn't even take her gloves off. It's not canceled, she said. It's postponed. Call it motivation. You'll thank me in the spring photos. Standing in that driveway, my father in the mouth of the garage wiping his hands on a rag that had nothing on it, I stopped waiting for him to become someone else. 30 years of marriage to a weather system teaches a man to stay indoors, I guess. That night my sister texted, "Can I come by? Don't tell Mom." She came to the shop after close, sat on the stool she used to sit on as a kid, and told me to just surrender. Not in those words. Her words were, "Just follow the plan. It's easier when you're on her good side." I looked at her. 29 years old, raising her daughter alone, doing it well, and so thin her watch spun loose on her wrist. She had a bag of almonds in her purse and ate exactly 6 of them while we talked, slowly, like she was rationing a hand of cards. I asked her when she'd last eaten bread in front of our mother. She laughed, then stopped, because it wasn't actually a joke, and neither of us could remember the answer. "I've been auditioning for her good side for 30 years, I told her. "Nobody's ever been cast." That's when the anger drained out of me and something colder took its place. She wasn't the enforcer in this family. She was an inmate with privileges. Weigh less. Want less. Take up less room. Call the cell cozy. I'd love to tell you I stayed strong through all of it. You deserve the truth instead. At midnight one Tuesday, alone in my kitchen, I had the wedding binder open on the steel table, and on my laptop screen, I can hardly say this, a meal plan. My own. Self-assigned. 8 weeks, portion columns, a weigh-in tracker, formatted neatly, because apparently even my surrenders come laminated. My sous chef came back for her jacket, saw me hunched in the blue light, and read the whole scene in one pass. She closed my laptop, quiet as someone folding a bad hand. "You feed everyone," she said. "Who feeds you?" That did it. I cried once that entire summer, right there into a kitchen towel, not over the venue, not even over the money, but because I just caught my own hands setting the second table for myself, out of pure habit, with nobody even asking me to. In the morning, I deleted the meal plan and texted my mother that I'd be by Saturday to collect my wedding documents. My parents were at a church picnic when I let myself into the house I grew up in. My box of vendor contracts and guest lists was exactly where she'd said, filed away under her roof, because back in April I hadn't thought to ask why my own things needed her supervision. As I shut the cabinet, the old drawer above it, warped since I was a kid, jumped its track and gaped open. A stack of photo albums slid sideways. I knelt to fix them, because heaven forbid anything in that house sit crooked, and a loose photograph slid out and landed face up on the carpet. black and white, yellowed at the edges. A thin girl in a Sunday dress, standing very straight against a kitchen door frame. And under her feet, in the white border, someone had written a number in pencil. Small. Neat. Faded. I turned the album over. Sandra, 1972, my mother's name, written on the spine in a man's blocky handwriting. I opened it on the dining room floor and met my mother at 8 years old, and I didn't stand up again for a long time. Every single photograph had a number penciled under it. My mother on a bicycle. My mother in a swimsuit at the lake, arms crossed hard over her stomach. My mother at her first communion, hands folded, chin up, eyes flat as a Monday. My grandfather had recorded her weight next to her age in almost every picture, like a farmer tracking livestock at a fair. One photo had the number underlined twice, with the only written comment in the whole album beside it, needs watching. And at the edge of nearly every family photo, like whether a young woman with a set jaw, looking away, not at the camera, not at the chart taped to the refrigerator in one photo, at some distance where none of it was happening to her. My grandmother. I sat there on the floor with my wedding box on my knees and this other inheritance open in front of me, and every certainty I'd ever packed into that house rearranged itself in about 4 minutes. I had spent my whole life believing my mother invented our family's obsession with the scale. She hadn't invented anything. She survived it, the way you survive a house fire by learning to smell smoke everywhere for the rest of your life. My mother wasn't the author of the ledger. She was its first entry. Driving home, a memory I'd filed away for 17 years came back and reintroduced itself as a crime scene. I was 16 at my mother's 44th birthday dinner. Someone made a joke about keeping an eye on the family's waistlines, and the table laughed the way it always did. Except that year, my grandmother stood up. Wine glass in one hand, the other flat on the tablecloth. The room went silent. "We weighed the girls in this family," she said, "and we called it love. I let it happen to you, Sandra. I will not sit here and watch it happen to the next generation." Nobody moved. My mother laughed, the hostess laughed, and said her mother had had too much wine. Someone changed the subject with both hands. Dessert continued. 2 weeks later, the story had already been decided for everyone. My grandmother was unwell. Bitter. Not to be called. Her Christmas cards stopped getting through. The chair at the reunion went empty and stayed empty, and her name quietly left our family's vocabulary. For 17 years, I'd been told her exile was punishment for cruelty. It was punishment for one true sentence. And she was the only person alive who had already paid the exact bill I was now staring at. There was exactly one person in the family soft enough to still have my grandmother's address, and scared enough to never have used it, my Aunt Patty, who runs a preserve stand at the farmer's market on Saturdays. I waited until she was alone with her jars. "I need Grandma's address," I said. No warm-up. No easing into it. Her hand froze over a row of raspberry jam. She glanced down the aisle first, checking for my mother the way you check for traffic before crossing. Then she pulled her order pad over and wrote it down on the back of a receipt. A street I'd never heard of, in a small lake town 3 hours north. Her handwriting shook everywhere except on the numbers. "She writes me every Christmas," Patty said quietly, straightening jars that were already straight. When I asked when she'd last written back, she said, "It was easier not to." And there it was, the entire family system, folded into one small sentence. Everybody privately ashamed, publicly punctual, orbiting my mother's version of the story, because the price of gravity is always lower than the price of truth. That receipt sat in my apron pocket for 3 days like a match I hadn't decided to strike. Then one morning I filled the gas tank and drove north. The town turned out to be 6 streets and a bait shop leaning against a gray-blue plate of lake water. Her house was small, cedar-shingled, silvered by weather, with tomato plants staked using torn bedsheet strips tied in careful, even bows. A garden run by someone with standards and no audience. I sat in my van for a full 5 minutes before I got the nerve to knock. The woman who opened the door was smaller than I remembered and straighter than my posture. White hair pinned back, eyes the exact gray of the lake behind her. "You have my mother's hands," she said, before I'd even said who I was. It was the first thing anyone had said about my body in months that didn't have a number hidden inside it somewhere. Her eyes flicked to the empty van behind me. "Does your mother know you're here?" "Not yet." "Good," she said, and pushed the screen door wide. "Sit down." Her kitchen smelled like coffee and tomatoes. She poured 2 cups without asking, sat across from me, and told me everything: my grandfather weighing his daughters every Monday morning before school on a scale bought at an estate sale, writing the numbers on photographs and once in the margin of a report card, right next to a spelling grade. 30 years of silence she'd kept and regretted every year of. "I regret the 30 years before I finally said something," she told me. Not the sentence itself. Then the part that broke something in me and healed something at the same time: "Your mother was the best student that house ever produced." That's the tragedy. They weighed the girls and called it love, and she got straight A's. I took a blank invitation out of my bag and wrote her name on it right there at her kitchen table. She read every word, including the part where it said "come as you are, no conditions." "I cost people things," she said finally. "Ask anyone." I told her the only speech I had in me, that she'd told the truth at a table where truth wasn't served, and that was the only reason I was standing in her kitchen instead of standing on my mother's scale. That there was a chair with her name on it, empty for 17 years, and I wanted to watch her finally sit in it. She looked out at the lake for a long moment. When she looked back, her eyes had water standing in them that she refused, by sheer will, to spend. "All right," she said. "But hear me, once I'm in a chair at your wedding, you can't unchiz me. They will make you pick, girl. This year, next year, every holiday until they bury me. Choose knowing that." "Then I pick now," I said. She nodded once, like agreeing to a fair price, and asked what we'd be serving in September. I called my father from the road and left him a voicemail. "Grandma will be at my wedding. Wanted you to hear it from me first." My phone lit up for 3 straight hours after that. I let it ring. The counterattack took 9 days, arriving in waves. First the phone tree, aunts and cousins calling, each one opening with "your poor mother," each one describing my grandmother as manipulative. I started asking a simple question back. Manipulative how exactly? What did she do? Silence every time. Nobody actually knew. Nobody had asked in 17 years. The story had always arrived pre-chewed, and swallowing it was called loyalty in my family. Then my father showed up at the shop alone, cap in both hands like a plate at a potluck. He sat through an entire cup of coffee before finally saying what he'd clearly been sent to say: "What if we all just slowed down, rebooked the original venue for spring, let the family cover the cost, and by then I'd have time to feel my best for the photos." The same ultimatum, just gift-wrapped and carried in my father's coat pocket instead of my mother's. "Dad," I said, putting my hand over his. "Whose words are you carrying right now?" He looked at me, and for 1 second I saw the flicker of a man who'd been at that table in May, studying his plate. He didn't answer. He hugged me hard at the door, like a man apologizing for a crime he was still driving the getaway car for. The RSVPs told the whole story in arithmetic. Out of 40 invitations sent to my mother's side of the family, for yes, 9 polite regrets, 27 silences. My mother had made it known that the reunion, happening the very same day, was a family obligation, and everyone understood exactly what showing up at my wedding instead would be scored as. Meanwhile, the rest of the town quietly voted the other way. My florist tucked extra flowers into my order and waved off the difference. The venue owners re-gravelled the driveway without being asked and without sending an invoice. My sous chef's church friends volunteered to park cars. Nobody said a word about my mother. They just kept quietly setting things down on my side of the scale. The Thursday before the wedding, I drove over to return her roasting pans. The back door was open a crack, and I heard her on the phone, bright and certain. "Oh, she'll fold. She always folds. She's been folding since she was 10 years old. Watch, she'll show up at that reunion with an apology and a casserole." I stood on the step with her pans in my arms and listened to my own mother read out my life's operating manual to someone, cheerful as a weather forecast. I set the pans down inside the door without a sound, took the house key off my ring, hung it on the hook, and drove back to my own kitchen for good. The night before the wedding, my kitchen crew staged a mutiny. I walked in with my checklists and my sous chef physically took the clipboard out of my hands and pointed me at a stool. They'd planned the entire menu behind my back and taped a sign over the pass that read, "The bride cooks nothing, by order of the kitchen." That was my wedding gift from my staff, a night off in my own restaurant, watching the best team in 3 counties cook for me instead of beside me. My grandmother arrived that evening by regional bus, one suitcase older than my mother, guarding a garment bag like it held documents. She stood in the doorway of my kitchen, taking inventory, the ovens, the crew, the sign over the pass, and said, "So this is what you built with the seat they gave you." I had to turn away and wipe down a counter that was already clean. Later, she watched me try on my dress one last time. I braced for the family reflex, the tug, the pin, the helpful suggestion about looking slimmer. Instead, she circled me once, slowly, hands behind her back like an inspector, and delivered the only alteration she thought the dress needed. "You'll want to breathe tomorrow," she said. Brides forget to breathe. At 7 the next morning, before the chairs were even wiped of dew, a car crunched up the gravel lane. My mother, alone, in the dress she wears for occasions she intends to win. She found me standing in the aisle between the folding chairs, dew on my sneakers, hair still in a clip. Neither of us said anything at first. The arch stood behind me, draped over the leftmost chair in the front row, where she absolutely could not miss it, a folded gray shawl. She looked at that shawl the way other people look at an accident. Then her voice came out softer than I'd heard it in years, and that softness was the most dangerous thing she'd brought with her. "I'm here to give you your real wedding," she said. "Send her home. Put her on the bus before people see. We move everything to spring, back at the original venue. I'll pay whatever it costs to fix this. The reunion's 20 minutes from here, one phone call, and there are 40 people in these chairs by 2 o'clock. Your whole family, Elena. Your father walking you down this grass. Everything exactly the way you used to draw it as a little girl. A step closer. And by spring, you'll have had time to feel your best. Think of the photos, with everybody in them. That's all I have ever wanted for you. And here's my confession. For 3 full seconds, standing in wet grass in a venue I'd paid for with my own money, I wanted to take the deal. She wasn't offering me a diet anymore. She was offering me the picture. 3 seconds, that's what 33 years of wanting will buy you, even on your wedding day, even knowing better. Then the 3 seconds passed, and my own voice came out level and low. "I found the album," I said. 1972, the one with the numbers penciled under every photo of you. Her face didn't move, but something in her stillness changed, the way a kitchen changes when something on the stove stops simmering. "I know about the scale in the hallway on Monday mornings," I said. "I know who taught you the math. I sat on your dining room floor and met a 12-year-old girl standing next to a chart taped to a refrigerator, and Mom, I would have burned that chart for her. I would have stood up for that girl at any table in this family." Her chin came up, and for one heartbeat there was something young and raw behind her eyes. I made myself keep going anyway. "That girl grew up and handed me the pencil and called it protecting me. They weighed the girls in this family and called it love. Not at my table. Not ever again." She started to speak. I did the one thing she has never known what to do with. I invited her in. "There's a chair for you in the front row, Mom. Right next to your mother. Nobody here weighs in. That's the whole dress code. Come in whole or don't come in." My composed, laminated, always in control mother broke, not into tears, into volume. Her voice cracked up an octave in the empty orchard. "You would choose that woman over your own mother? She humiliated me at my own birthday table." "No, Mom," I said, and it was almost gentle, because it was almost over. She told the truth at it. "And I'm not choosing her over you. I'm choosing whole over welcome." She stood there a moment longer, reaching for every tool on her belt and finding all of them wrong for the job. The tears had no audience. The phone tree had no line to me anymore. The checkbook had nothing left to cancel. She adjusted the strap of her purse, a small, precise, terrible gesture, a woman tidying herself because nothing else in the room would obey her. "You'll regret this every time you open that photo album," she said. Then she walked back to her car. The door closed with a click, not a slam. She wouldn't give the orchard the satisfaction of a slam. I stood alone in the aisle where, in 4 hours, I would be married, and I didn't feel triumphant. I felt the exact size and shape of the hole she'd left. You have to let the true things weigh what they weigh, and the truth was that my mother would not see me married, and choosing that didn't stop it from being a wound. My grandmother came out onto the porch with 2 cups of coffee. She didn't ask what had happened. She'd spent 17 years learning the sound of that particular car leaving. I'm done being the before picture, I told her. I know, she said. Drink your coffee. At 10 o'clock, my sous chef rang a brass bell across the yard, and my wedding day, the one I'd chosen, stood up and got dressed. 61 guests sat in the orchard by 11. Marcus's family, my kitchen crew, the venue owners, the florist, 4 brave relatives from my side. And in the leftmost chair of the front row, in her gray shawl, spine like a fence post, hands folded on her purse, my grandmother, seated in the exact place tradition reserves for the mother of the bride. Nobody walked me down the aisle. That was a decision, not a shortage. My grandmother had offered her arm the night before, and I'd kissed her cheek and turned her down. I'd gotten here on my own feet, all 34 years of the road, and it felt right to finish the walk the same way. The music started, and I came down the aisle by myself, in a dress that fit the body I actually live in. Marcus pulled his glasses off with both hands at the sight of me, which is what he does when reality outperforms the plan. His vows were 11 seconds long, and I'll be quoting them at him for 50 years. Every version of you is always enough. I'm just the one who gets to say it out loud. Mine were about staying and breakfast and a kitchen that smells like butter and onions. I had to stop once mid-vow while 61 people waited for a bride and her lungs to renegotiate. You'll want to breathe. Brides forget to breathe. Then rings. Then the kiss. And somewhere behind us, bees kept working the fallen apples through the whole ceremony, like none of it was any of their business. We were pouring cider at the long table when I heard it faint, then not faint, from the far end of the lane. Gravel. 1 car. Then 3. Then a line of them. I pieced together the Millbrook Lake half of the story later, from witnesses, and every version agrees on the sequence. Lunch had gone out at noon at the reunion, store-bought food this year, and more than one person apparently remarked on the difference out loud. My mother stood at the head of the pavilion and gave her usual welcome speech. 24th annual. So blessed. And then, mid-meal, my Aunt Patty, 57 years old, who has never interrupted anything in her entire life, stood up at the second table with her napkin still in her hand and said, into a silence she'd made all by herself. She raised her glass toward us. Then she turned, found the photographer at the end of the aisle, and pointed one knuckled finger at him like she was directing traffic. Young man, take the pictures. All of them. Frame the ones where everyone's laughing. The shutter went off maybe 400 times that evening. There's one photo, blown up wide as an oven door, hanging in my restaurant kitchen today, me, head thrown back mid-laugh, Marcus's hand in mine, and at the edge of the frame, slightly blurred because she was still in motion, my grandmother, lifting her glass. Nobody in that photograph is holding their breath. Because this channel doesn't sell fairy tales, here's the honest version of what came after. My mother hasn't called. It's been over a year now. Her version of that September went out through all the usual channels. I was cruel. I was manipulated by a bitter old woman. I chose a stranger over my own family. About a third of the relatives still repeat that line, and the town is small enough that I run into some of them at the pharmacy. My savings toward a second kitchen location took a hit. Every dollar of the wedding came out of my own pocket, and it set that dream back a full year. I've started saving again. Slower this time, but with a clearer head. My mother is 20 minutes from here. I'm going to go see my mother. She put down her napkin and walked to her car. It took about an hour for the pavilion to empty out behind her. Not all at once, and not everyone. They came in 2s and 3s down our gravel lane, sheepish, dressed for the wrong party, hungry. My crew, God love them, just kept setting more places at the table because feeding the unexpected is literally what we train for. My sister's daughter came flying out of the car before it had even stopped rolling and hit my grandmother at full 8-year-old speed. My grandmother, who does not cry, held that child's head in both hands and rocked her, hands visibly shaking, while everyone around them suddenly found a reason to study the apple trees. My father's truck came last, late in the afternoon. He stood at the fence line, cap in his hands, waiting to hear the price of admission. I walked over and opened the gate myself. "There's food, Dad," I said. "Nobody owes a speech." He came in as a guest. Ate 2 plates. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, the witnesses agree on one more thing. The pavilion at Millbrook Lake stood completely empty, except for one person, sitting alone at the head table. At golden hour, my grandmother stood up in our orchard with a glass of cider, and the whole gathering went quiet on its own, no fork against glass needed. 17 years ago, she said, in a voice built for reading verdicts, I was uninvited from this family for saying one true sentence at a birthday dinner. I won't repeat it, most of you were there. A ripple of held-back laughter moved down the tables. Tonight, my granddaughter got married in the body life actually gave her, at a table she built herself, where the only rule is, you come in whole. My sister texted me at midnight, 2 weeks after the wedding. What was she like? Grandma, before all this? It was the longest real conversation the two of us had had in a decade, all of it typed into a glowing screen at midnight, but real all the same. Now she brings her daughter to my shop on Saturdays. My niece eats a full pastry at my counter, asks for a second one, and gets it. Nobody at the table says a single word about it. My father comes by some Thursdays. Drinks his coffee. Says almost nothing. Fixes things in my kitchen that don't strictly need fixing. Last December, I mailed my mother a Christmas card, addressed by hand, no conditions written inside it. No answer came. And I've let that weigh exactly what it weighs, no more, no less. The door of my restaurant is unlocked 6 days a week. Anyone who can walk through it whole is welcome. That was always the entire price of admission, and it still is. Thanksgiving happens at my place now. One long table. We had to bolt an extra steel prep table onto the end of the dining table just to fit everyone. It looks ridiculous. Nobody minds. 22 people last year. Blended from both sides, no second table anywhere in the building, and no special plate made up for anyone except my niece, who asks for the pickle tray within arm's reach and gets it, because that's what tables are actually for. My grandmother sits where she can see the door, out of old habit. She spent the last holiday teaching my niece how to tie tomato stakes with torn strips of fabric, the two of them bent over the knots like a pair of engineers. Up at the lake, the reunion still runs every September. My mother still hosts it. The scale, I imagine, still lives in her bathroom. The ledger still lives in her head. Some machines you don't get to unplug, you just stop feeding them your name. Here's what I know now, and what I tell any woman folding herself smaller to fit a frame somebody else is holding. Love that has to be earned back, pound by pound, isn't love. It's rent. And the bravest thing you will ever do is move out and build a longer table. That's my story. A 40-pound ultimatum. A $4,000 cancellation. One empty chair, finally filled. And a family reunion that stood up in the middle of lunch and walked toward the truth instead of away from it. If someone in your life measures their love before handing it to you, you're allowed to build your own table and set it generously. If this story gave you that rush of justice, hit like, subscribe for more stories like this one, and share your own story in the comments. I read every single one. Click the next video for another. There's always a seat here, and nobody checks the frame.